The year is 2024. The United States stands at a crossroads with an election looming and an economy hanging in the balance. But behind the scenes, away from the spotlight of campaign rallies and debate stages, a powerful institution is about to take center stage, the Federal Reserve. Imagine a world where your money loses value by the day, where prices skyrocket and your savings crumble. Now imagine that one institution holds the power to prevent this nightmare, or usher it in. This is the reality of the Federal Reserve, and how its decisions in the coming months could shape not just our economy, but the very future of American democracy. As we approach the 2024 presidential election, all eyes are turning to an unlikely star, the Federal Reserve. But why should you sitting at home care about a group of bankers in suits? Because their choices affect everything from the price of your groceries to the interest on your mortgage, from the job market to the global economy. Let's dive into the high-stakes game of monetary policy, where billions of dollars and the fate of nations hang in the balance. The Federal Reserve wields immense power. Its decisions can make voters feel rich or poor, optimistic or anxious. That's why the Fed's independence is crucial. It's designed to be a fortress, impervious to political whims and the short-term desires of elected officials. But what if that fortress had a secret back door? The 7 governors on the Fed's Interest Rate Committee are nominated by the President and confirmed by Congress. In theory, they serve 14-year terms to ensure independent judgment. This extended tenure is meant to outlast any single presidential administration, allowing Fed officials to make decisions based on long-term economic health rather than short-term political gain. In practice, however, it's getting complicated. 4 of the current members were nominated by President Biden, 2 by former President Trump. The chair, Jerome Powell, has received bipartisan approval. But as the 2024 election approaches, this delicate balance is under threat. Historically, Fed independence has led to better monetary policy. When central bankers are free from political pressure, they can make tough decisions that might be unpopular in the short term but beneficial in the long run. But lately, those appointments are becoming a political battlefield. And if politicians start pulling the strings, well, let's just say they might prefer the dessert of low interest rates to the vegetables of fiscal responsibility. From 2022 to 2023, the Fed hiked interest rates from near 0 to over 5%, aiming to tame the inflation beast. It's a bold move, designed to cool an overheating economy. And it's working. Inflation has been falling. But at what cost? Higher interest rates mean more expensive mortgages, pricier car loans, and slower economic growth. It's medicine that can be hard to swallow. So far, the Fed has stood its ground. But as Election Day draws nearer, the pressure will only intensify. Which brings us to our next chapter. What happens when presidents push? Let's take a trip down memory lane to the most infamous case of presidential meddling, the Nixon era. The year is 1969 and President Richard Nixon has just appointed Arthur Burns as the new Federal Reserve Chairman. Nixon's expectation? That Burns will be a loyal foot soldier, ready to juice the economy in time for the 1972 election. What followed was a master class in arm twisting. Nixon made it clear he wanted lower interest rates, and he wanted them now. In a recorded conversation from December 1971, just 11 months before the election, Nixon tells Burns, "You can lead him. You know you always can. Just kick him in the rump a little." The result? Burns caved, lowering interest rates despite signs of growing inflation. Nixon won his re-election with a staggering 60.7% of the vote. But then came the aftermath: rampant inflation, hitting 10% by 1974. The party was over, and America woke up with one hell of a hangover. But Nixon isn't alone in this hall of shame. Other presidents have tried to sway the Fed, usually with disastrous results. Studies show that while this pressure might jack up prices, it rarely stimulates real economic growth. It's all sugar, no substance. The variation in how often presidents meet with Fed officials is telling. Former President Clinton, for example, met only 6 times with people from the Federal Reserve during his entire presidency. Nixon? A staggering 160 times. The consequences of this meddling were almost always negative. Research indicates that political pressure on the Fed increases prices without stimulating the economy. It's a lose-lose situation, sacrificing long-term stability for short-term gain. Of course, there are times when the Fed must act, even in an election year. During crises like the Great Recession of 2008 or the pandemic in 2020, the case for cutting rates was obvious and largely uncontroversial. These were moments when shocks hit the system, and the Fed had to respond swiftly. But what about now as we approach 2024? The waters are murkier. Inflation has been falling, but it's not yet at the Fed's target rate of 2%. The labor market remains tight. Consumer spending, while softening, hasn't collapsed. It's a complex picture, one that defies easy solutions. This brings us to the present moment and the high-stakes drama unfolding before our eyes. So here we stand, on the precipice of another pivotal election. The state of the economy could make or break the next presidency. Jobs, wages, prices, all will be under the microscope as voters head to the polls. President Biden has pledged non-interference with the Fed, echoing a long tradition of at least public respect for the central bank's independence. His opponent? Well, that's where things get interesting. There are reports, troubling reports, of plans to seize the reins of interest rate decisions. The Wall Street Journal has revealed that allies of the former president are quietly drafting proposals to erode the Fed's independence. It's an unprecedented move, one that could redefine the relationship between the White House and the central bank for generations. But why should you care? Why does this matter beyond the Beltway? Because this isn't just about numbers on a screen or policies in Washington. It's about the money in your pocket, the roof over your head, and the future you're building for your children. When a central bank loses its independence, it becomes a tool of the ruling party. And history shows us where that leads, to boom and bust cycles, to runaway inflation, to economic instability. Throughout history, societies have crumbled under the weight of unchecked spending and manipulated interest rates. Our founding fathers knew this. That's why they gave the power of the purse to Congress, not the president. They understood that when a leader controls both the sword and the wallet, democracy itself is in peril. The use of low interest rates, along with strong government spending, has devastated other societies throughout history. It's a siren song, promising prosperity but delivering ruin. When money is cheap and credit flows like water, it feels good for a while. But eventually the bill comes due, and by then, it's often too late. As we hurtle toward November 2024, the stakes couldn't be higher. The Fed's decisions in the coming months won't just influence an election, they'll echo through the corridors of history. Will they hold firm, guided by data and long-term thinking? Or will they buckle under political pressure, potentially unleashing forces they can't control? In the best-case scenario, the Fed doesn't do anything differently just because it's an election year. It stays the course, adjusting policy based on economic indicators, not political calendars. But that takes courage. It takes conviction. And it takes an informed and engaged citizenry that understands what's at stake. So the next time you hear about the Federal Reserve, don't tune out. Don't change the channel, pay attention. Because in this high-stakes game, we're all players, whether we realize it or not. The coming months will test the resilience of our institutions. They'll challenge our understanding of the separation of powers, and they'll force us to confront fundamental questions about the nature of our democracy. Will we safeguard the independence of our central bank? Or will we allow it to become a political football kicked around for short-term gain? Will we demand sound monetary policy based on expert analysis? Or will we be swayed by populist promises of easy money? Will we learn from history's harsh lessons, or are we doomed to repeat them? The choice is ours, and the world is watching. As we close, remember this. The Federal Reserve may seem distant, but its operations are obscure. But its impact is profound. In the quiet corridors of its headquarters, decisions are made that ripple through every corner of our lives. So stay vigilant, stay informed, and above all, stay engaged. Because when it comes to the intersection of politics and the economy, ignorance isn't just costly, it can be catastrophic. The clock is ticking, the stakes are high, and the future of our economic system, indeed of our very way of life, hangs in the balance. What happens next is up to us.